Data bias is the fact that data itself is generated through human processes and systems that have constraints as well. And what this means is that the data can have inherent bias within it. So for example, consider a batch of CVs that were collected from a job that previously attracted male candidates only. If we train an AI on that, it's not really going to appreciate all the other applications we could be receiving from female and other candidates in the process. And because AI itself generates data and outputs, if we're not careful, the bias can reinforce itself within the system and become more and more entrenched. And therefore, whenever we're dealing with AI and data, in fact, we need to be careful and considerate around data bias. Guardrails are principles, policies and practices defined by the organisation to ensure that AI is used ethically and sensibly within the business. When it comes to generating these guardrails, it's important to consider a range of opinions across the business from various stakeholders, and that's particularly important to guard against the issues of data bias and data ethics. It's really important to generate a framework in which to ground the guardrails, and this should cover things like the data that you're intending to use, the provenance of that data, the suitability of it to the task, must address the risks and the benefits that the AI development would bring. It must make sure there's going to be controls in place and that the system is going to be monitored and reviewed and that we have a human in the loop. And we must make sure that the data generated by the AI process itself is captured and can be used to refine and inform the next steps. Data sufficiency is a key consideration when developing AI models within organisations. We can think of sufficiency in a number of ways. For example, the volume and variety of data that we have available. We can think of whether we have sufficient quality in the data to represent the problem that we are trying to solve for. We can think about whether we have sufficient data to test for any bias in the system. We can also think about whether we have sufficient historical data on which to train the model over a representative period of time. And we can also talk of sufficiency in the sense of data minimization under principles such as GDPR. So using the data necessary to solve the problem, but no more, in the interests of data ethics and protecting consumers. So considerations of data bias and having guardrails and data sufficiency all point us towards needing an organisational level data strategy. And this is to ensure that we make the best use of the data in the organisation within the guardrails that keep us on track regards ethics, data regulation, data privacy, and doing best by the consumer. The data strategy really needs to focus on involving the entire business in its formation. It needs to consider the availability of data, how that data can be surfaced to the AI applications, the quality of data and interventions to improve that, other data sets that might be available in the business, as well as third-party data assets and other data sources that could be brought in to improve the quality or extend the variation in the data to better represent the problem at hand and to minimise data bias.